Welcome to Integration Production Tools, Production Validator, and Code Change Alerts. We've done the Production Validator presentation in the past, but this year it's actually become part of the product, and we had someone get an Innovation Award for working on it,
Yes.
Justin Owens. I'm John Goodgame. This is James Bourette, Justin Owens. We've spent the last 2 years off and on working on this. And James was definitely the developer. Justin was definitely the tester. Oh, of course. Let's turn that off. All right. There we go. So in any case, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I know everybody probably wants to catch a bus and get to the party, but there are a few things in here that you may find interesting. So, Production Validator, the basic idea around this was to make our standard upgrades a little more reliable, something that you could sort of anticipate what it was going to look like. You know, the idea of full integrated testing is very difficult for anyone. It's usually not complete. It's usually full of problems, and you usually have problems getting resources to do the testing that you want to do. So we just figured that that's probably something that's very painful for everyone, as painful as it's been for us in the past. And then spot checking obviously is not very thorough, and typically you wind up missing things. So basically the project started off actually quite some time ago with Johns Hopkins group asked me for a service that would allow them to do some testing through a single service coming in, and instead of making file components for every interface that they had. And that was sort of the beginning of the idea. But generally, we wanted to be able to identify errors and variations between an upgraded system and the current system that's in production. And obviously eliminate the testing costs and making things a little bit more predictable.
So this is our idea that came up with coming from Cloverleaf. We tried to do this integrated testing, and we set aside 30 days for a code freeze, trying to just test 3 full days of messages through our entire environment and try to do that full regression testing. We did as much as we could, and we didn't even we dedicated 5 full-time resources to it. We didn't even finish. We just went ahead and upgraded and said we got as close as we could go. So when we moved to Health Connect in 2022, I believe, we said we needed the same type of tool when we were getting ready to do our upgrade from 2019 to 2021, that we needed to do this full integrated testing, but we didn't have a month to set aside to do, and it needed to be as complete as we could, but so we got 5 days, we came up with a code solution that was file-based. We were able to export everything to file, run 5 days of messages through, compare those file outputs, and get a result. And we were able to do that in a week's worth of time. Now, we had a lot of manual processes. We were doing a lot of file comparisons because everything was set to a file. You were exporting every message to a file, rerunning that through a file solution.
So I'm going to jump in here for a second. So Justin and I were presenting at the Seattle conference for those who were there. And James Bourette's in the audience. And we're excited because we went from 840 hours down to 90 hours for an upgrade.
Yeah.
And James comes up afterwards and he goes, "We can do better." So that began the process of the Production Validator. He actually had the same idea some years ago.
Yes.
And had code sitting on the shelf that was, I hate to admit, probably much better than mine. And so we started this new process. And you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so we took that process of file-based solution, and with James's help, we were able to migrate that into a database solution, where then we're pumping all those messages into the database, and all we have to do is move the database from one system to another, upgrade that system, and then reprocess all those messages, and they're still sitting in the database. So instead of doing a file-based comparison, you're now able to do a database level comparison and hash messages. And you're able now, since that's still in the application, you have access to your schemas and things like that, where you can say filter on a specific field and rerun your diff. Whereas if you're doing just a truly file-based, you can't say eliminate a specific field.
So what that kind of looked like over the years, the original 840 hours, we got it down to 96 hours. And in 2023, it was 8 hours. And we didn't put the actual value in 2024 because we figured Justin was much faster than most people because he's done it like 100 times at this point. But it actually took him 3 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah, 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. I was doing my day-to-day job. The computer was doing all the work. I just set it to run overnight. When I came in the morning, I looked at the report, cleaned it up a little bit, ran the diff again, and then went back to doing my day-to-day job while I was doing the diff. And then, when it was done, it was done. And I did the entire upgrade by myself versus having more resources involved. And everybody else was able to keep working while I did the entire project from start to finish without anybody else involved.
And you'll notice that the days to complete went up 1, but I think that's because you've added a lot more checking than was originally in there.
So the system took a little bit longer to run, but my time that I spent doing anything, and as well as anybody else in the room or anybody else on my team that wasn't having to do anything, was the additional benefit. So nobody else, really, I was able to kind of do it by myself, and I was able to involve my team as a training process for them so they could see the steps that I was taking, but it wasn't necessary to have those people involved. It was just something as a learning experience for them, so they could do it the next time, so I don't have to always be the one that's doing these things.
So we're going to actually do the entire process in the next minute or so, because I think it's important to understand. Obviously, I'm not doing the 12 million messages Justin was doing. I think I'm doing 20, but wanted you to see what the process actually looks like. But this is the process. It's fairly simple, and basically, I am pasting some commands that are actually in documentation. It's loading the libraries because this is my 2023 version, so that's important to understand. You had to load it because it's a version prior. And then we're creating the template and pulling out messages from the system. This takes a few seconds.
There you go.
Okay. Then we take the namespace that was created to compare the test namespace, and we move it over to the new location of the new upgraded system. And that's what it looks like on the source system. That's the entire process on the source. Here's what it looks like on the target instance. Now keep in mind, the target instance now is 2024.1. The code's already there, so I don't have to load the code base. And a point is that when you go into WRC to get the Production Validator, it says 2024.1. It's actually for you to load on prior versions of Iris, so that you can use the tools, because it didn't come out until 2024.1. So when you see it, don't be confused that you can only use it for that version. It's actually meant for the earlier versions. All right, so this is what it looks like on the target system. Again, this is 2024.1. I'm not loading libraries, I'm just running the information into the system to say this is where my template file is, and then making sure that the object exists. And then we're just going to run the compare. Now in this case, I'm not going to have any variances. It's just to show you the process and how simple the process actually is. And that's it. Oh, we got one more thing to do. Sorry. Got to get the HTTP. So there at the end, there's an HTTP that is going to take you to the diff tool. I'm not going to wait for that to happen. And this is 0 issues. That's not likely what you're going to see initially. But just, this is probably what you're going to see, right? You're going to see some differences. You're going to have the ability to remove, a certain operation or a service. You have the ability to filter on fields. And then you work through this. I don't know, you had, did you have a ton of these? You didn't have a ton. You removed certain things.
I had a
right?
lot of differences that popped up. I think we had 300,000, 400,000 messages that popped up as differences. But a lot of that stuff we were able to filter on certain fields because for a test system, we put like a processing ID of T, and a production system, you put a P. Well, when you're running in your dev server, it's going to flag it as a T. And so
I mean, after you put your filters in.
yeah, so you put all those filters in. We still had a few that popped out because we had a misspelling in one of our DTLs. A field name was slightly misspelled. And in 2021, just ignored it, and it just didn't send the data that was in that field because it didn't know where to send it. In 2023, that actually caused an error. So every time that message hit, it didn't even send to the downstream system, it errored. So we had to fix that before we did the upgrade, or all those messages would have errored as soon as we upgraded. So we were able to resolve that prior to the upgrade, and then when we had our upgrade event, it was a non-event because it wasn't a problem anymore.
And you can do a visual trace. You can see this just like you would in the original production. So this is how you would enter, the filter fields. You can actually, there's a command to do it, but this it's in this table. So if you needed to see what you were filtering out, but basically it's fairly simple.
So this is how we were filtering out certain fields. For example, the processing ID, or we had like a PV1 field that was like a date time. It was set to now. So if it's, obviously those are going to be different. So we just ignored that field across the board. So we just set those values in here, and when you run the diff, it just ignores them, and you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, things to be aware of. I'm going to let you speak.
So when I started running this, I broke my server, well, not my server, but my local machine, because it expanded my journal so fast and expanded the database, and the CPU just exploded. My VM that I was running on wasn't set up to handle that. So I had to call our server team and have them dedicate a VM to me that had standard processing and wasn't one of those flexible processing ones. So kind of keep that in mind. Your journals are going to grow. You may have to purge them. If you're on a newer version, you may have compressed journaling. That'll definitely help. But if you're on an older version, your journals are going to expand. You just may have to purge them on a regular basis. If you're running message, a lot of volume, the database is going to grow. It's going to take some time, so your system is not stalled. It's just depending on how much volume you're doing, you may take a little bit longer. And like I said, your processing is going to spike because of how much you're taking a day's worth of data and trying to shove it through now. So your processing is definitely going to jump.
So currently it's for HL7 V2 only. I want to have some acknowledgments. Did you want to say anything, James? Or?
I do, actually. So I just wanted to say, that, as John said earlier, this code was on a shelf. We had brought it to Global Summit and said, hey, we want somebody to partner up with us and test, and we got no bites. And so when I sat in on this, and I was like, oh my God, we did this already. And I went to Justin and I said, hey, would you mind testing? And he put so much time in, and we wouldn't have been able to do this without him.
Yeah.
Right? Like this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I will also say, I want to give some acknowledgments to some other folks, because Scott Roth, the inventor of the BPL from hell, we had to do testing on all sorts of formats.
There's still an issue with the code, though.
Oh, he's gonna give me a hard time.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
URC has a ticket, and
Okay.
my BPLs from hell broke.
There you go. You must have added new code.
No,
He has.
It's the interface maps.
Yeah.
Your comments are too long?
When in the interface maps won't run because I have too many if statements in my BPL.
Oh,
Oh.
not for the
And
production
actually,
validator.
in the production validator, he looks at interface maps, and I couldn't run it.
Right. Well,
Right.
yeah, it was
It was BPL's like 30 pages long. I mean, it's
right.
unbelievable.
We'll fix it.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Anyway, we'll get to that. And I want to say, you know, Johns Hopkins, at University Hospital in New Jersey or Newark, there's been multiple people who've helped on this along the way. So I just want to acknowledge that. I'm going to go to, this is where you can get this. I'm going to do something real quick because this is the new project I'm working on, code change alerts and audit. Basically what this is, and I'm going to try to go really fast because I'm sure we're almost out of time. It's really the idea around someone changed something in your system and understanding who did it, when they did it, and what was done, right? So I'm going to do this real quick. The objective is to be able to have a system where if someone makes a change, that you're alerted to that change occurring, and you have the ability to see what was changed and how it was changed. So I'm going to skip this stuff because I think we're close to time. But basically, the other thing is it goes into your production and identifies all the issues within the classes. So if something's not compiled, it was added and not compiled, what have you. This is just one of the reports. When you load this, basically this is an example of what it looks like. When I run the change audit, it exports any changes. So I literally have a history and timestamp of all classes and all settings. So every time something gets changed, you get an alert, someone just changed this class at this time. This is what they did. In this case, you know, the class was added, so it has a count. You now have 304 classes, right? The execution time on this is 0.034 seconds, right? So this is no time at all. Same thing here, new class was deleted. That was the other thing, the ability to identify deletions, what it was deleted, who did it. I also have the versions of all this class and its history, right? So if someone deleted something by accident, I know what it is, I know what it used to be.
Hey, John?
Yes?
Are you looking to be able to have the possibility of doing an account rollback?
It's not source control.
You could manually
You had to
redeploy the
ask me
code,
that.
but yeah.
Could you do it? Could you go and see what classes are there, and could you export from the global? Yeah. Yeah. Always putting me on the spot. So this is an example of settings being edited, what that looks like. This was the initial load for one system that's right next to me. So it took 111 seconds to get 735 classes exported into the globals and 594 host items, right? A much larger system had 4,000 roughly of classes, and it took a while. It took like 25 minutes. This is the initial load. So think about it. It's taking every class in the system and every setting and saving it into globals, right? For a historic, you know, value. And then once they ran the initial load, the same things, you know, 0.899 seconds, 0.12 seconds. So you could run this like every minute or every 5 minutes. And you can run the alert process, which I have. This is a list of changes in what I've set up in terms of being able to notify. If you look, settings edited, new class added but uncompiled, class edited by me, host items added, right? So all those kinds of things are there. This all gets changed into the globals, like I said, sort of the history. This is the alert. It has a list of all the changes that were made since the last time the alert ran. So you can send this on Teams, you can send this to email, it doesn't matter. But the idea behind this is get the information to the person, because how many times, I mean, I used to work in the hospital systems, I used to work in the hospital systems, and you know, I can't tell you the number of times something went wrong, and the first thing we're doing is like, who did what, right? Like, who did this? What was changed? Who did it? And this gives you that information before you probably even get, you know, any other kind of alert. So the idea would be to run this quickly in your production environment, and maybe, you know, a weekly thing or a monthly thing in maybe your dev environment, so you know what's being worked on, you know what's in there. And the idea is to do multiple namespaces. Right now I'm only doing proof of concept. Mirror member discrepancies, right? Do you have any discrepancies between your mirrors? Compare, you know, stage and prod discrepancies, because you should be using the same promotion. And then, you know, adding schemas, lookup tables, so on and so forth. I think we're probably very close to out of time, if not past it.
I think we're right at it.
Right at it? Good. So please take a survey. Thank you.